This week, it's Guestapalooza. Our own Andy Evans from Legends and Champions talks to TNA star Ryan Nemeth. Joe Aguinaldo and I look back at the week of wrestling, including Monday Night Raw and the passing of the legendary Bob Caudle. Plus, an original graduate of the Heart Dungeon, Dirty Duke Durrango, and I share some stories, plus a little bit of an announcement.
Ladies and gentlemen,
welcome to McGuire on Wrestling.
Allow me to reintroduce myself
with Mike McGuire.
Stand up, son. Let me take a good look at you.
This guy's a serious professional.
You know what I want to talk about?
Yeah.
The world of professional wrestling. Do I have your attention now?
Done shilling. I'm done shilling, okay?
Let's get this show on the road.
I love professional wrestling.
Hello. How are you? Good week? If you're a wrestling fan, I think it was a pretty good week. Lots of interesting things happened on a lot of the major shows. And if you got the chance to see some indie wrestling wherever you are, it was probably a good time as well. I'm Mike McGuire. This is called McGuire on Wrestling, a weekly wrestling radio show and podcast. I myself coming off an indie wrestling show here in Southern Alberta, and I'm doing a lot of lighting and production for that. But the funny thing is that now that's becoming the norm when it comes to going to wrestling shows. I mean, there's still great indie shows that'll just come, set up in a hall or a gym or a theater or something like that, and off they go. But these days, it's hard-pressed to find something that doesn't have lighting, maybe some effects, video, all this stuff, because that's what wrestling fans are conditioned and getting used to. And so a lot of promotions, even on the independent level, try and keep up and try and do what they can. And so I offer what I can to enhance that a bit, but realize for me, the lighting thing is like a hobby, you know? So I've just managed to run into a bunch of equipment and kind of know how to use it a little bit and have some fun with it. But nevertheless, it's always a great time getting to be at an independent wrestling show. I got to meet some more great wrestlers out there. Actually met a pair of women who wrestle, one out of Ottawa and the other from Savannah, Georgia originally. She's in the Atlanta area now. Just came out of the Nightmare Factory, Cody Rhodes' school down there, and just an amazing story. Doing what she can, getting booked everywhere she can, and you'll hear about that with another famous woman in wrestling, with a guy we're going to talk to today who came up in the dungeon at the same time that Natty Neidhart and TJ Wilson especially were going through the dungeon. And so came up with them. To me, he's Jordy, but to a lot of wrestling fans in Alberta, he is Dirty Duke Durrango. So we'll hear from him. Also, highlights from an interview with Andy Evans and TNA star Ryan Nemeth this week. Andy got to catch up with the Hollywood Hunk. Plus, after this past Monday's Raw, I almost had Joe Aguinaldo talked into doing another edition of our old Raw review show called Tuesday Morning Cooked, and then saner heads prevailed. But there was a lot that happened on that show. AEW, of course, had their Blood and Guts show, which was insanity. And then we followed up with what happened on SmackDown with like Matt Cardona and LA Knight and all these other strange things that are popping up. Plus, TNA has a new world champion in Frankie Kazarian. That's causing a lot of discussion. And another thing causing some discussion is the future of this program you're listening to now. I have not tried to be too overdramatic with this, but it's been exciting, and there's been a lot of things that need to be ironed out before I could officially go ahead and have that conversation. So I'm not going to do it alone. You'll hear from someone who's been a big part of this process. That's on the way. But right now, let's do what we always do and get down to some of the biggest stories of the week in pro wrestling. This is the 5 Count.
You want to hear the breaking news?
Hi, wrestling fans. Welcome to Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. And we got an exciting hour in store for you this week.
Our condolences to friends, fans, and family of the great Bob Caudle, legendary wrestling commentator. It was announced on Sunday had passed away at the age of 95. For many fans, Bob Caudle was the voice of Jim Crockett Promotions, the NWA, Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and anywhere there was wrestling that needed a microphone held, Bob Caudle would be the guy to walk us through a lot of those matches. Many luminaries from that time, including Ric Flair, wrestling reporter Bill Apter, and others, have spoken out in memory of Bob Caudle. We're also sending our thoughts out to Tanea Brooks, who is known to wrestling fans as AEW's Rebel. course, she was a longtime associate of Dr. Britt Baker, but hasn't been on AEW TV in a long time. We found out a while ago she was going through some medical challenges, and now, in a video released to fans, it says she's been diagnosed with primary pulmonary lymphoma of the lungs. She says there is a treatment plan in place for her, but right now has some other challenges to overcome first.
I have a very serious infection right now, so I'm on IV antibiotics, and I have to clear this infection first before I can address the cancer. And then we'll start there, and then we'll kick its ass.
Before her time in AEW, Rebel was also seen in TNA Wrestling and had a career in dance and as a professional cheerleader with the Dallas Cowboys.
Woo, woo, woo. You know. All right.
Well, he came out as a surprise in the John Cena Last Time Is Now tournament. Matt Cardona, or Zack Ryder, says that right now there's nothing for sure when it comes to his plans moving forward. Now, several reports are saying that it was a one-off appearance for Zack Ryder, but Matt Cardona has been appearing on NXT regularly. Here's what he had to say in an interview after his appearance on SmackDown this past Friday.
This might be a one-time shot. I might get the call tomorrow. It doesn't matter. Because I'm Zack Ryder. I'm always ready. And I guess I could say this. Woo, woo, woo. You know it.
Well, Dave Meltzer is off this week, but when he gets back, I'm sure we'll be talking all about the newest inductees into the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame. The list was announced earlier this week. Spiros Arion and Gran Hamada topped the list as far as votes went, followed by Darrell Dixon and CM Punk. Cody Rhodes is now a Hall of Famer, as well as Sabu. And Bobby Bruns top off the class from this year. In order to be inducted into the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame, inductees need to receive 60% or more of the vote the panel is voted on around the world. And at the time of production of this week's show, we have a few matches announced for AEW's Full Gear. We'll go from the top and work our way backwards with the AEW World Title Steel Cage match, seeing Adam Page defending against Samoa Joe. Chris Statlander defends the Women's World Championship against Mercedes Moné. AEW's World Tag Titles see Brodito defend against FTR. And the TNT title is up in a no DQ match as Kyle Fletcher takes on Mark Briscoe. There'll also be the National Title Casino Gauntlet match, which is currently vacant. In that tournament right now are Shelton Benjamin, Bobby Lashley, Ricochet, Mike Bailey, and Kevin Knight. There is room for at least 2 more participants in that match. In a $1 million 6-man tag team match, Josh Alexander and the Young Bucks will team up against Jurassic Express and Kenny Omega. Also on the card, Pac versus Darby Allin. And of course, it's AEW, so expect a few more matches to be announced later on this week.
McGuire on Wrestling.
Well, again, I don't want to get too grandiose about this, but if you've been following this show and what I've been doing in wrestling media before that, and maybe even just my radio career, this is something that I've always kind of dreamed of. And don't get me wrong, I love what I do for a living. I work in country radio. I get to play music, talk to stars, play songs, and do all that fun stuff. And all my bosses know this. If an opportunity to full-time make a living talking about pro wrestling on the radio or in podcasts or whatever could be a thing, that's where I would be going tomorrow. I'm not saying we're there yet, but starting next year, McGuire on Wrestling and the Celebrate Wrestling podcast shows, we're going to get a lot bigger footprint now. Our 3rd province, technically, to be showcased in, with a massive AM radio footprint, AM 1150 out of Kelowna, and that entire BC interior area is going to now be carrying McGuire on Wrestling as part of their weekly programming. Joining me to talk about it, he is the assistant program director from AM 1150, Grinder Pablo. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing great. How are you, Mike?
You know what? You're my best friend right now. we don't even know each other that well. It's funny, we work in the same company, but this, and I have to give a nod to a guy inside of Vista Radio as well named Ken Kilcullen, because he really championed this as well. But thank you for giving this show and all my colleagues here on Celebrate Wrestling an opportunity to reach out to a whole new fan base.
Of course. I mean, I know a lot of people will consider talk radio to be very politics and boring. And, I want to change that narrative. I want us to be something for everyone. And this is going to be a great fit here.
It was fascinating to me because Ken and I were just meeting about other stuff a while back. And he had mentioned how AM 1150 was going through some new exciting things. And I said, hey, AM 1150, isn't that news, talk, and sports? And he goes, yes, it sure is. I said, so about that sports thing, used to do this radio show on a sports talk radio network, and it doesn't exist anymore, but it's a perfectly packaged show ready to go. Been doing it for a while. Got, we're hitting the downloads and everything. You want to check it out? And so I guess he passed it on to you, and this isn't feeding for compliments. Okay, that's not what I'm doing here. But when you were then handed the link to McGuire on Wrestling and our podcast here, what was your first impression of what we're doing?
Before I listened to it, I thought, oh, great, here we go. And then I took a look at the website. I took a listen to everything, and my jaw hit the floor. There were some great interviews. Dave Meltzer, you had him on. There were some stars you had on, and I think I spent probably 10 minutes, and I went over to Ken. I'm like, we need to have this. What do we do to get this going?
Well, and that's part of it. Dave was with me in a previous incarnation of what we do here, and I even have to give nods to the original creators of that program, because without that I would have never got this opportunity to do this. But when we took McGuire on Wrestling and made it a thing, it almost was a happy accident. And I called Dave and I said, look, I'm gonna keep going. What do you say? And he's like, I won't do it with anybody else but you. So yeah, Dave Meltzer, I mean, great guy, polarizing guy, don't get me wrong, and we don't always agree, and that's something you'll hear on the show. Is that we don't always agree on everything, but we're not jerks about it. And that's kind of the whole mantra behind McGuire on Wrestling and Celebrate Wrestling, which is, again, our social media and our podcasts. And it is something where we're just trying to talk about something we love, but at the same time, we know that it's not always rosy. Maybe that's where we tie in more with a news talk station. But.
At the end of the day, as sports entertainment, which is what wrestling falls under, I know people will say, oh, it's scripted. Oh, it's this. We still have such a huge wrestling audience here, especially here in the Okanagan. We've got thrash wrestling coming that comes to the Valley quite often. And you see a great turnout to these events.
I'm very excited about this. If you guys can't tell, Gurinder is obviously a fan as well. We were nerding out about wrestling, and I was showing you the studio here with the belts and everything. So I got to ask you, man. Now, thank you again, AM 1150. We start, what's the date we picked again? January
11th.
January 11th. We go on AM 1150. For those of you listening on the podcast or on the radio, you're probably not going to notice that much different. It's still going to be the same show we do with McGuire on Wrestling. A couple breaks here and there, but other than that, it's going to be the same. But I have to ask you now, not as the radio guy, not as the lead there at AM 1150, but I have to ask you as the wrestling fan. Okay, who's your guy? What was your girl growing up? Who was it? Who do you watch?
So I had probably the biggest crush on Trish Stratus growing up.
Okay, well that's not even like a default answer.
No.
Like that's
But I think favorite wrestler of all time would be The Undertaker in any of his iterations. I loved American Badass. It felt weird, but at the same time, as a kid, it was so cool. Like seeing the big motorbike just go down the ramp, around the ring, and then you see him just clean house. Really, like that was the show.
For me, my favorite Undertaker period, oddly enough, and I don't think this is anybody's favorite Undertaker period except mine, but I really enjoyed Undertaker versus Underfaker. From SummerSlam 94, poor Brian Lee had to be the Undertaker. Real Undertaker's like 2 times the size of him. It didn't quite land the way they hoped it would, but they got it done.
If you're in that business, you're trying to be creative, trying to think of what else can we do? Why not?
Back to the topic at hand here, Gurinder. Yes. I want to thank you so much again for giving this show, as well as really through association, the other podcasts as well. I know that the Greek guys over the ACT and Andy and Stefan over in the UK, all very excited to be showcased. And we're going to be showcasing features from their shows as well. And we're going to keep getting the guests coming. And I can't wait to, actually, I got a lot of guys here in Southern Alberta that go out and do those thrash wrestling shows. So I've said I'm going to hop in a car and I'm going to head out there and we're going to do something, because this is a whole new footprint. This is just growing pro wrestling talk radio, which I never thought in 2025 I'd get to say that that anybody was doing, let alone me. So again, this has nothing to do with me. This has to do with the support of everybody that supported our shows till now. Thank you again for your support on behalf of the company and also your colleagues there, because you know what? Talk radio is the toughest grind out there. Nobody understands how much work goes into a talk radio show and talk radio programming. And even the stuff that you and I ironed out and how we're going to get the show on the air, like you've really gone above and beyond to help make this dream come true. So thank you, man. And I can't wait for January. It's going to be amazing.
I can't wait for this show to start. And like I said to you before, when you're in town, let us know. We'll have a studio space for you to work in, and we'll definitely get that going.
So there it is, January 11th, 2026, McGuire on Wrestling, part of the Celebrate Wrestling Podcast Network, expanding our national footprint. And even just saying that out loud, it feels, like I listen to a lot of the big shows, obviously. And never do I think for a second this is one of them. It might be on its way, but I don't know. I take pride in what I do here. I take pride in what our team does here. And we're all doing it, again, for the love of the game. This isn't a money-making thing, okay? This isn't, I've got a job. We've all got lives we got to take care of. And it's always been a hobby. It was always supposed to be a hobby. And it's turned into something that a lot of you have supported and allowed me to take everybody with us on this wild ride here. I will say this. There are talks with other places to expand this thing even further, but without your support listening to this show now, whether you're on CKXU here in Southern Alberta, 106.1 The Goat, all right, the web homes of my radio station here, 98.1 The Ranch, as well as 94.1 CJOC, or even if you're now going to be joining us on the radio in BC with AM 1150, this is really what the dream has been, and I'm getting a little emotional about it, so I'm going to throw it a break. We're going to come back. We've got some great conversations coming up for you. Ryan Nemeth from TNA talked to our own Andy Evans from Legends and Champions. We'll have a highlight of that with the full interview posting this week. Dirty Duke Durrango is on the show, and up next, Joe Aguinaldo and I take a look at the week in wrestling and some of the things we noticed.
This is McGuire on Wrestling.
The alternate commentary table, ACT, brought to you by the Celebrate Wrestling podcast feed. Listen, it's Mitch, it's Dimitri. We got this little pod thing that we do every single week where we talk about the week in wrestling and the way in which we do it from the other side of the railing, right, Mitch?
I like that.
We're coming at it because we love it, we hate it. The alternate commentary table, ACT. Download it anywhere where you're getting your podcasts. Sure.
Thank you so much, Boston. Because of you, tonight, the champ is here!
Welcome back to McGuire on Wrestling.
Well, it's been a little while since we've heard from our pal Joe Aguinaldo. How are you, buddy?
Hey, man.
Little sad news broke as we were starting to produce today's show. And that is that legendary announcer Bob Caudle has passed away. Bob, of course, a mainstay in the NWA and Jim Crockett Promotions, Mid-Atlantic. I mean, it was funny. I was just isolating clips for him in the 5 count and just going back, like seeing some of the names that he worked with that now are revered as like all-time legends. And that was weekly TV, you know?
Yeah, actually, like I'm not one to, really be affected by celebrity passings and stuff, but I'll admit this one was a little rough because I grew up watching this guy. I remember watching, the old Maple Leaf wrestling show in Toronto, and they would show tapes from the Mid-Atlantic area. So I grew up watching Bob Caudle. He was kind of like, they talk about the announcers being the soundtrack of wrestling. He was definitely a soundtrack for me as a kid.
Just going back and watching a lot of his tapes through the years here and stuff he was on. I mean, he's called some legendary moments. He's called some of the biggest championship matches. But he also seems to be one of those guys that was revered kind of in the Gordon Soley role, to many extents the Jim Ross role. Although sometimes there's stories that you hear otherwise these days. But
let's not get into that, please.
No, but of being that consummate professional that you'd hear about. And I was just watching actually an old interview with Jim Cornette, and he was talking about Bob Caudle, and he was saying how he'd always try and break Bob and try and get him to giggle during a show, and it just wouldn't happen. Meanwhile, everybody else is busting a gut watching it on the monitor or anything else, but Bob was just like tunnel vision.
Like the other thing you got to remember too is back then, I mean, it was still very much like the kayfabe era, and they were still treating it as, you know, like a legitimate sport. Like, think about it. You wouldn't see Bob Caudle or, you know, at the time, Crockett, like laughing at a wrestling match like you would see today with Michael Cole and let's say Stu Bennett. And that's not a knock, by the way, on anyone today. It was just a different time period. But yeah, Bob Caudle brought a legitimacy and sort of a professional take to pro wrestling. And again, I'm going to miss that guy. Like, that one affected me a little bit.
We'll probably talk more about Bob Caudle in the next couple weeks here, maybe when Dave gets back from holidays here. But Joe, while I have you here, we've made the announcement. It's official. I want to thank you for your friendship and, most importantly, your contributions to what we do here as well. Actually, I think it's the other way around, to be honest with you. The friendship comes first, but as far as what people are listening to, it's definitely your contributions to this show, because now we are expanding our footprint, going into the BC interior.
Nice.
And this officially has us covered in 3 provinces and obviously around the world through podcasts and everything. So thank you once again, my man. Here we are doing full-blown wrestling radio again.
You know what now, man? I have to thank you for letting me come along for the ride. I mean, you know, I know you don't particularly like getting a lot of compliments, but like, you've worked so hard and through some serious adversity, dude. Like, let's not beat around the bush here over the last, you know, several years. And it's just been, it's really been my honor and my privilege to be a part of it. So congratulations to you and all the work you're doing. I'm just glad that I got to, you know, say some stupid stuff on your podcast and on radio shows. And
well, hey, we're going to keep doing that. If you're expecting with this expansion for there to be like a serious uptick in quality, I got news for everybody.
No. It just means that a bigger number of people will be able to hear some really dumb stuff and have a good time listening to it.
And hopefully we get closer and closer to that Maple Leaf Mr. Big Stick advertising deal.
Yes.
Give you guys a great rate. I'm just saying.
Well, Sarah
Smelly was the Globe Mail. She was working for the Globe Mail at the time. I think she's doing something else these days. But
well, if she's listening to this, and if you got any contacts, give us a call.
yeah. I've got a Maple Leaf plant like literally like a few miles down the road from me, and they're not calling me back. So it's all good. It's all good. Well, it's funny that you talk about some of the silly things we've done on the radio and on podcasts throughout the years, Joe, because I almost was convinced and ready to, and I know that I had sucked you in on it too, to do another rendition of Tuesday Morning Cooked, which is our old Monday Night Raw review show. After this past Monday's Raw, I started watching at the beginning, and I thought, this is going to be exciting. It's John Cena in Boston. It's got all the right ingredients to make something great. There was rumors earlier in the day that the Dominic Mysterio confrontation was going to happen. We thought maybe it might set up for Survivor Series. Turns out, no, we'd get that match that night. Before we get to that match, though, I told you that this is a great Raw. You were doing something else, and you went into Netflix, then you jumped it from the beginning. And what I forgot to mention was, except for the start.
Okay, so there was a 2-minute period when I started from the beginning where I was really hating Mike McGuire. Like, I was just hating your guts. I'm cursing your name. I think my wife got scared for a little bit. It was just... It was horrible,
pal.
because
get in line.
Because that beginning was all promos.
And it wasn't even all horrible promos. The horrible promo, let's be real here, started off with the first guy we saw in the ring. And for Raw in Boston, the last time in Boston ever for John Cena, who do we get to see first in the ring? Just kidding. It's Triple H. And he went on and on. Mitch and Dimitri had a great comparison to it this week. They said that it was like he was doing the best man speech that nobody wants to listen to at a wedding.
Yeah, 100%. And like, I mean, even like, look, I get that he has been around the block, so to speak, right? But just the way he was all about, like, I'm the authority on what the greatest of all time is. I'm just like, dude, can we just bring John out and have him talk, please?
He could have he could have just said that, and he could have said it in a minute. Mm-hmm. But I think he went on for like 5 or 6 minutes on this thing, and I didn't time it, so I can't say that. But that's what it felt like, at least.
Oh, it was long. And again, this is why for about 2 minutes I hated your guts, because I was like, we're going to do this and I got to note this out.
Like, cursed be his name, but Vince McMahon at least would just go, ladies and gentlemen, the greatest of all time. And then John Cena would come out, right? But now it's like, golly, here's a Triple H soliloquy. And it made me start to think, like, does he have an earpiece in? And they're saying, like, yeah, John's cab is just pulling out now. First of all, John Cena would come in a cab. That's my imagination.
Yeah, exactly.
But John's cab is pulling up right now. Okay, he's just getting out of the car now. Here he is. Is that what happened? Like, were they stalling for time? Nobody knows, but
they could have put a match on for that length of time.
Pretty much. They could have just played his theme song.
Yeah.
Without anything happening, and the whole crowd would just be singing along to it. Do the old heel thing. Play your intro once, let it fade out, start it over again. Or as we call it these days, the Jey Uso entrance.
Yeet.
Yeah. Run it back, Joe. Let's not.
Yeet.
From there, we get John Cena coming out and being John Cena, doing great things. And then, oh, baby, it's happening. It's happening. Dirty Dom shows up. And not only does he do the, hey, this is about me, old man promo, but he actually does it in a way where you actually buy into it. I'm watching this thing the whole time thinking, wow, this Dirty Dom guy really thinks he's better than John Cena and Triple H.
It was a good promo, man.
Which in my mind nowadays, he definitely is. But he made it interesting enough that when they announced that the title match was going to happen right then and there for the Intercontinental Championship, I mean, that was really the Christmas come early gift, especially for those fans in Boston. And I think for a lot of fans everywhere, whether he was to win or lose, this is something that fans have wanted to see in this last little run here. It's not somebody that he has wrestled before. It is a younger guy coming up. It's a guy who could be, for all intents and purposes, in the next 2 to 5 years, maybe one of the biggest stars, period, in that company, which is saying something, because this is the same kid that had the nice portrait studio haircut, the clean-shaven face, and the cheesy grin when he first started wrestling with his dad. And now this Dirty Dom thing, man, it's huge.
He plays the character very well.
Well, he played the character well, but then he also did something which was great, and that was when the match started, he got the jump start on Cena, and this is something you were telling me you loved about this match moving forward.
100%. Like, it was all John coming from behind, but because of cheating, because of dirty, underhanded tactics, and I really dug that about this match.
The other thing about this is that, yeah, there were the Eddie Guerrero tribute spots, but this one wasn't a total tribute match like we've seen with some of the other opponents where they're pulling out all the finishers and everything else. Like, this was, like you said, really well done. The heel does all the dirty tactics thing. The babyface finally starts coming up. But I think that John Cena and Dirty Dom was a match that needed to happen. I think that the perfect bow on the gift is Cena winning that last championship, because honestly, let's face it, whether he was Intercontinental Champion or not doesn't matter. It's not going to impact the legacy of John Cena in any way whatsoever, other than he gets to say, yeah, Grand Slam champion, great, that's fine. My question now is, who is he losing it to, and does he lose it in that last match? And if so, the popular money's on Gunther for the IC championship in the final for the tournament, but I mean, it could really be anybody.
I think that's what makes this interesting, but let's stick with this narrative for a second. Let's assume that he is going to lose the belt and his last match, okay? If that's going to be the case, I don't want it to be Gunther, because Gunther's already been IC champion. That guy should be really in the world heavyweight, like the bigger title picture. So right. I do like the idea of him losing the belt and, again, giving back to the company, because I mean, let's face it, that's what he's pretty much been doing this entire run. He's been trying to give back as much as he can. So I would not be shocked if he loses the Intercontinental title. But who that's to, I'm still kind of wondering, especially now that he won the title. At first, like the popular money or the popular sort of thought was Gunther, but now that he's won the title, I'm not so sure about that.
I don't know. Gunther has that reign as the longest Intercontinental Champion now. I mean, that was something that he lays claim to. And there have been times where the secondary title has been elevated above the World Championship before. That might be the case here. No disrespect to Punk and what he's doing. But honestly, with John Cena having that belt, it's a totally different story than anybody else having that championship. As much as I hate to say this, and I wouldn't mind seeing him win it just so he can say, yeah, I got this one too. I don't want it to be Sheamus right now.
No.
If Sheamus wins it down the road, great. Gunther needs to still be established as the guy. And I've talked about this with Dave Meltzer on the show before as well, saying that, okay, Brock Lesnar, Gunther, this is the match that we were expecting a couple years ago. Does it get more interesting if Gunther is the guy that retires Cena? Brock is the only guy that really beats Cena as far as this retirement tour goes, with the exception of Cody, I guess, winning the championship back. So does it turn into we've got these two guys that were really spoilers of the John Cena retirement tour, then going off against each other? And then if this is Brock's retirement, informally or formally, are we saying, hey, Gunther's the guy that shuts down legends? He did it to Goldberg. If he does it to Cena, then it makes the Lesnar match more interesting to me in the long run. Again, this is all hypothetical if any of this is even happening, but that's the only way I see this working, where Gunther gets that credible retirement victory over Cena and it being a good thing for the company moving forward. Because I don't know where you're at with Gunther. I still think the guy's fantastic. And he is one of those anchor points that people can hang the company on. But the one thing I got to say is that I think they got to turn him somewhat of a babyface somehow. And that might happen after the Cena match. Who knows?
I like Gunther. I think he's really good. I mean, I've liked him since he was Walter, right? So back in his indie days. I guess it's just kind of weird because I don't want to see him, even though it's a good thing, I don't want to see him win the Intercontinental Championship, because personally, I think that's beneath him. I think he should be in a more top program personally.
Well, yeah, and again, just to play devil's advocate here, if it was him against Dirty Dom for the IC title, I'd agree with you 100%. But when it's him against John Cena for the Intercontinental, let's face it, the Intercontinental Championship is, from a stature standpoint, and he would never say this because he's a firm believer in elevating everything you have, but it's beneath John Cena. If this was to happen, this should have happened years ago. But it's on his way out. This reminds me of the time. Do you remember in WCW, towards like the late 90s, right before the closure, I think, where they had the U.S. title on Ric Flair?
Right.
And I thought that was so weird. And then even in WWE, they had the tag team championship on Ric Flair. Like, this guy was the guy who was the 16-time kiss, steal, and wheel and deal and all this other stuff. And now he's got the secondary belt, and now he's got a tag belt. And so while it put something on his waist while he was in that company and even in WWE, the titles are beneath some guys, for sure.
No, and that's fair. And again, let's just stress that this is all speculation, people.
Oh, yeah.
So, because I mean, jacking. If we didn't have the title, I think Gunther does make sense because, he's a guy that you're grooming, the longest IC title reign. He's already been world champion. He's Taker and all those guys. They love Gunther. So this is a guy that I think the company has a lot of, they're putting a lot behind him. So he's a guy that would make sense to win. But I will also say that, and I shout out to the ACT guys, but Mitch and Dimitri actually mentioned a name that I thought made sense as well. LA Knight, that guy, that win over Cena, that could get him maybe to that next level that, he needs to get to.
And that's just it. They've had the big question mark on him for a long time. Many people say that the ship has sailed for Knight, and I'm not one of them because I
think he's good
too, but at the same time, I can see where they're saying that, where we're going to look at a whole new era. I mean, this Cena retirement show on Saturday night's main event is going to be half NXT talents versus half main roster talents. So already they're really putting a youth movement, a real elevation on the next faces. And maybe LA Knight is that guy. I hope for his sake he is, but I just don't know. I just don't know. That said, on SmackDown this past Friday, I don't know if you saw the show or any highlights or anything, but LA Knight versus Matt Cardona or Zack Ryder. I mean, talk about, this was like early 2000s wrestling. This was two jacked guys. You know, had an okay match, whatever, but I mean, I just looked in the ring. I was like, wow, you don't see this a lot anymore where it's just two really jacked guys, trunks, and doing their thing.
Yeah.
And it was mind-boggling to me, and it almost felt a little bit out of the era, which is hard to say too, because even the bigger guys today, minus Brock and minus the really big guys out there, obviously, I mean, the big guys aren't that big anymore.
No, and again, like the Zack Ryder character, just with much love and respect to Matt Cardona and Zack Ryder, because I love that Zack Ryder character back in the early 2000s. In 2025, it felt a little out of place.
Whoa, are you serious, bro? That is not going to get you Broski of the Week status. Well, Joe, we've got a ton more people to talk to. Andy Evans caught up with Ryan Nemeth from TNA. That conversation is coming up. And up next, an old friend of mine from the Alberta wrestling scene who also just happened to be there when young Natty Neidhart was cutting her teeth. And, of course, her book is making waves out there. We're going to talk to a guy. You'll love this name, Dirty Duke Durrango.
Nice.
Yeah. He's one of the best out there. He's actually on our Facebook page already under his shoot name of Jordan Clarke. But Duke and I go way back.
Dude, kayfabe.
Oh yeah, sorry. Now we're apologize for nothing. Nevertheless, that conversation is coming up next. Joe Aguinaldo, always a great pleasure to talk to you, man. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
This is McGuire on Wrestling.
Legends and Champions is your weekly fix to go old school, looking at the classic world of professional wrestling. From Hulk Hogan to the Hitman Bret Hart to the Icon Sting to the total package Lex Luger, we have it all each and every week on Legends and Champions, part of the Celebrate Wrestling Network, and it's available on a Wednesday with me, Andy Evans. See you there.
Welcome back to McGuire on Wrestling.
Well, it's been a big show. We made the big announcement about the future of the show, making its way into the BC interior in the new year with AM 1150, expanding the radio footprint for this show. But, of course, you can listen anywhere online around the world at CelebrateWrestling.com as well. But right now, one of two guests here, our own Andy Evans caught up with Nick Nemeth. We're going to have a highlight of that interview coming up for you. The whole thing is going to post on the Celebrate Wrestling podcast feed later on this week. And also on the feed coming up, a special conversation with someone from my wrestling past who is definitely one of those unsung heroes in the wrestling business. And as far as a regional guy, here in Alberta especially, where I'm based, he's well known to generations of wrestlers before him, after him, and all points in between, including some of the biggest names out there. And one of which we talk about because she's got this new book out in Natty Neidhart. So we're not going to tell her story through this guy. We're going to tell his story of being around her when she first broke into the dungeon, as well as some of the times that he and I spent together in wrestling. And to be 100% honest, I think I've talked him into it. This might be a new show making its way onto the podcast feed here. We're going to figure out what it's going to be called. But Jordan Clarke, a.k.a. Dirty Duke Durrango, was one of the stalwarts, one of the bread and butter guys you count on in Alberta pro wrestling for years. And I had the chance to catch up with him recently. Here is some of the conversation. Again, they'll be making its way to the podcast feed this week.
McGuire on Wrestling.
If you're a wrestling fan in Alberta, you don't not know the name of Dirty Duke Durrango. How are you, sir?
I'm doing excellent, thanks. How are you, brother?
Very good, very good. So, few reasons that triggered me to have you on the show here. You'd actually put up this post a while ago talking about working with the Honky Tonk Man and just kind of one of your old retro memories. And it got me thinking, I bet Duke has a ton of stories of guys like that. But then also, I thought timing-wise, with Natty's book coming out, The Last Heart Beating, wouldn't it be neat to talk to somebody that was kind of there for all of it from a different perspective. And
yeah, I mean, I was at the dungeon when she showed up.
So you were actually in there before she was?
Yes. Yeah, she was. They lived in Florida when I broke in. Like Davey and Diana had just come back. Like Jim and Davey were living down there. Right. Just travel was easier back then. And so Davey and Diana moved back first, and then shortly after that, Jim and Ellie moved back.
Talk about that first day being there with her, and then I do want to. This isn't all going to be tell me about your friend Natty, because I really do want to talk about your story. Because
but I think we're all really proud of our friend Natty,
and that's kind of that's where this is coming from, right? Is that I mean, I remember being there for some of the early Stampede. I always bust jokes about it's like this is another Natty Neidhart Bella Lovett's classic, but it's true because that was the only match we had back then because there weren't a lot of women that were wrestling at the time.
And the ones that were, you'd have to pay to bring in, and financially it wasn't feasible for the company. So it was very tough for those two to, kind of get experience like that.
So talk about that day that you remember her coming in.
Like, I kind of remember her at first, she was hanging around a lot. Like when we kind of broke in, there wasn't a lot of, girls weren't really allowed in the dungeon.
Right.
And then, Brooke and Lindsay in particular, Allison's daughters, they were down there all the time with Georgia, Harry's younger sister. And so Natty and them just started kind of coming around. So she started to see the wrestling. And then once she was around it, you could see pretty quick her and TJ formed a bond when they were, I don't know, maybe 15. Yeah. And I think just being around it, and it's in her DNA, right? Whether it's from her grandfather or her dad. It was kind of like one day she wasn't in the dungeon, and then the next day she was. And the truth is, when she started doing most of her early training, that was during a time when I left the Hearts. I'd been gone and then went back, and she was really then just starting to, kind of find her legs and really, to be honest with you, slap the out of the guys in the dungeon.
We're on the radio.
Sorry.
That's all right.
There's no other way to say that, though.
That's fine.
I mean, to tell you the truth, it's one of the reasons I thought when she got to the WWE, she'd have a hard time because none of the ladies there worked that style. Like,
right. It was
Natty
the Divas era.
Yeah. And she always worked strong style. So I think there was a lot of those ladies that did not want to get the stuff slapped out of them.
Well, I remember too, we talk about those matches from the early Stampede days. And again, that was the women's match, really. I mean, occasionally, like you said, another girl would come in from somewhere else or vis-a-vis. But I mean, I must have seen those two wrestle a dozen times in the time that I was bouncing back and forth from Calgary to Edmonton alone. And that's just like regular shows,
When you're working with the same partner, I mean, I worked with Pistol Pollock like that pretty extensively on the road. You sort of fall into these routines where the office is trying to get you to work kinks out or get a good match together. But it gets to a point, it's like, hey, creatively, we have nothing else to do. Program-wise, we have nothing else to do. And for the people involved, I mean, it can be hard to stay motivated. So even the fact that they both were motivated to be there every week and still do their best to tear the house down is, again, testament to their passion for the business.
Again, this is all stuff I really hope to ask her about someday rather than us sitting here, mansplaining it back. But
for me trying to speculate on what the thought process was.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's it. I don't want to put us in that position either, but I would think that, okay, me, for example, okay, the most I've ever done, I've done like 2 angles in my life and a lot of ring announcing and a lot of commentating. But for me, I get what it can feel like to be the only guy doing one thing on a show, basically. And that's just all I can bring to the table, and even though I love doing it every day, there are those days where it's like, man, I wish I could do more. I wish I could do something different,
Well, in your heart of hearts, no one's a one-trick pony.
These days, for example, like I work with a promotion down here where I'm at, and I don't do anything in ring or on microphone or anything. I do a lot of lighting and production stuff. So It's nice because I can use that other skill. But when you're a wrestler, I mean, your other skills are the types of matches you can have. And I could imagine that would drive you crazy.
Well, and looking around the locker room and saying, I think I could work well with this person or that person, or, and so it's tough when you're sitting in the locker room. It's like, well, I could work well with that person, but they're a guy and I'm a girl. Intergender wrestling was not a thing back then.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like you could, Natty or Belle Lovitz, neither of them could look around the locker room and say, geez, I'd like to put a program together with her. I think her and I could do this well together. We can set up a tag team. It's just, so I give them so much respect because to get any real experience other than what they were kind of doing to just do the same thing over and over, they had to leave the territory where a lot of us, I had 14, 15 guys I could wrestle with. I had a job at home. It was probably one of the detriments to my career because I never really had to leave the territory and I could still work a whole bunch of days a year.
We're talking to Dirty Duke Durrango right now, one of the, what I like to call Alberta veterans, Stampede Wrestling veteran, PWA. We could go on about Natty for a while here, but I want to let folks know a little bit about you and your history because...
Okay, last thing I want to say about Natty before I don't want to hijack your thing, but the cool thing about Natty and TJ in particular is that, I've known them again since they were teenagers. I've known TJ since he was 14 and Natty since she was 15 or 16 at the oldest. And of course they've matured over the 30 years or whatever, but they're both still the same people. Success has not changed them. And to me, that's the most important thing about Natty and TJ.
True words can be said. And it's funny because I saw the photos of her coming through Calgary. I was trying to make it up for the day, but morning radio job doesn't allow for that. So, but it was one of those things where it's like, yeah, geez, there she is with everybody, just hanging out and just being Natty again.
She's still just Natty. Yeah. I love it. So anyway, sorry, back to, I don't want to hijack your interview here.
That's fine. Let's talk about you a bit here. So I first met you and I was coming into the Prairie Wrestling Alliance. I was a radio student at the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology, and I wanted to be a wrestler in the worst way. I really did, and I started training, and that was kind of a nice little package in exchange for photos and ring announcing that I would do with the promoter back there. So that's how I got into the camp. But you would come in and help train along with a couple other guys once in a while, and that's where I really got to know you personally. But
I remember that space now, that little kind of office in that strip mall.
It was actually an old Photoshop is what it was.
I forgot all of that. Like, this is why this is fun for me to do. I kind of forgot about that.
And remember the one wall, though? It had like a whole wood scene, like it was like a forest.
No.
Remember that? No? Okay, well, that was... I still have pictures of that place. Mural. I'll try and find them showing up on the social media because I have pictures of that place and yeah, all of us in there doing our thing. And then I don't know if you remember this, but I was actually doing pretty good for a fat kid trying to be something I wasn't. I was actually doing well. You and Don Ferguson actually pulled me aside once saying, you're surprisingly agile for a bigger kid is what was told to me. And again, you don't remember this either. That's fine. You've done a few things since then, Duke. Man. It's all good.
I've been hitting the head a lot since then.
But that was, to me, that was like high hopes, high praise. And then I don't remember if you were there that day or who was. It might have been Red Thunder. I know Don was there and a couple other people were there. But we were learning to do basically like the sit down bumps, right? The drop down.
Oh, yeah.
We're doing it onto a crash pad. But I think it was off of like the first or second rope or something, like a leg drop basically, right?
Bumps I never like to take.
Yeah. Well, it turns out my body didn't like it either because I had gone to radio college on a back injury. And then I was feeling better.
High spot for a back injury.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened. So I did one, I was okay. Did the next one, and the entire left side of my body almost shut down for about a half an hour, and I was sitting outside the ring. Basically, I sat out the rest of practice that day, and then I kind of, it kind of came to me like, yeah, I don't think I can be a wrestler, and that was the hardest day for me around wrestling because I was doing really well with the other stuff, but yeah, I was like, okay, well, if this is going to happen now,
painful, yeah, because it's never. One of the things I'm really fortunate is when I was done wrestling, I got to say I was done wrestling. You know what I mean? I think that's the toughest thing for people is you don't get to sort of say, okay, I do or don't want to do this. The choice gets made for you sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, your body lets you know pretty quick.
I mean, whatever. I went on and I started doing the ring announcing stuff. And then when I moved markets, I found places that I could do that and got better. And then, the opportunities continue to come here and there. So, and I've been happy with it. And then the wrestling radio thing now, this is year number 4 for me, I think, now doing this. So
right. It's so good to see how far you've come from that because I remember when you started as our ring announcer, because before that, in my opinion, we didn't really have one.
Mm-hmm.
Kurt would do it and I love Kurt, but your voice was just so much better. You just seemed like a more natural at it. So I do remember like, holy cow, we have a professional ring announcer. You know what I mean? Like I remember when you came in specifically because before that, we had Spelvin in Calgary who was good, but there was never anybody in Edmonton that I remember.
So that barely scratches the surface of one of my favorite conversations you're going to hear on the podcast feed later on this week with Dirty Duke Durrango. And I'm telling you, this guy has seen enough stuff in pro wrestling that you're going to learn something from this guy. So much, in fact, like I said, I think we've managed to talk him into coming back once in a while And I think a new pod may be born with Dirty Duke Durrango. But stick around. We're not done yet. Our own Andy Evans got in touch with Ryan Nemeth from TNA Wrestling. They talk about all sorts of things. A highlight from that interview, which is also making the podcast feed this week, is next.
This is McGuire on Wrestling.
CKXU-FM 88.3 in Lethbridge is Southern Alberta's true alternative radio station.
The cream of the crop! Nobody does it better.
Proudly carrying McGuire on Wrestling every week.
Yeah.
If you're looking for something different to listen to,
This is gonna be a slobber knocker!
check out our NCRA award-winning lineup of programs or stream us anytime at ckxu.com.
Welcome back to McGuire on Wrestling.
We literally have too much show for you this week, so to keep it under the hour, we're just giving you highlights of some of our conversations here, and they're both going to be on the Celebrate Wrestling podcast feed later on this week. So what's going to happen is on Tuesday, we're going to upload the conversation with Dirty Duke Durrango. On Wednesday, Legends and Champions with Andy Evans. Andy will return on Friday with his conversation with Ryan Nemeth in full. And then Saturday, ACT, Sunday, back with your full gear recap here on McGuire on Wrestling. So we got lots and lots to talk about still in the world of wrestling. I did want to play for you some of the conversation that Andy had with Ryan Nemeth, though. It's a ton of fun. Ryan Nemeth is obviously a funny guy. You know, him and his brother have been doing stand-up tours for a while. And Andy had the chance to catch up with him, just talking about some of the things that have gone on the last little while.
I want to take you back to last month and talk about Bound for Glory, because biggest pay-per-view in TNA. How was it to be a part of that?
You know, I'm reliving all these moments, thinking about the last year, all 2025. I've been in some huge record-setting shows, at a number of attendance record-shattering shows at TNA. So that's just the most recent one of them, and it was incredible. The show was incredible. The Nemeth had a great showing. My big brother won the Call Your Shot gauntlet match. Mike Santana brought the TNA title back to TNA. Being part of that show was incredible. The sound of that crowd and the feeling of that crowd, walking out of that giant entrance. I mean, I've been lucky enough with TNA to have a number of memories that I'm never going to forget. And I've wrestled in many different companies, and I've, had some ups and downs in life, and I had some really big downs before TNA. So to be given a shot with TNA, to be given a ball and say, here, can we trust you with this? And the answer is yes. The crowd response has been great. The response of the company has been great. My brother thinks I'm great. My mom thinks I'm doing great, and my parish priest thinks I'm doing. I think I'm crushing it right now, Andy. Thanks for asking. No, I'm very lucky. I'm very honored to be part of the TNA roster. And at first I felt like an outsider kind of visiting. And now I do really feel like, for the most part, I've been accepted with this amazing crew. I mean, I keep talking about Leon Slater because in my mind, he's the future of wrestling. And he's part of our show. I mean, we have Mike Santana, we have the Hardys, we have the Rascals, we have the Inspiration, we have Brookside, we have, behind the cameras, we have people like Lance Storm, Tommy Dreamer, Ace Steel. We have, and people, there's a million people I can't mention right now, but I mean, my big brother, literally, Nick Nemeth, is one of the greatest wrestlers who's ever lived ever. And we had, it's a magical, fiery, awesome, hot thing to be a part of. And I'm very, very, very appreciative to be a part of it. I feel like I fit in now.
I mean, it's great to see you on TNA. And it's great to see TNA doing so well, because, there was a period when it was Impact. It wasn't necessarily performing as well as what it could have done. But now I
had nothing to do with that.
You didn't. You were at the other place. We won't talk about that.
You'll notice that when I joined TNA, things really started happening.
I was just going to get there, Ryan, if you just give me a second. Now, you mentioned there that Nick won or co-won Call Your Shot with Frankie Kazarian. That puts you in a unique position. So you could go for the TNA World Tag Team titles, or Nick could go for the TNA World title. What are your plans? Can you give us the spoiler?
Andy, why can't we do both?
You only get one shot at the contract.
I mean, we don't need the contract for the tag titles, surely.
Well, that's a good point.
I mean, we've earned that in the past. I will tell you that I have a lot of plans. I have a manifesto. I have some schemes. I have some nefarious deeds I'd like to start unveiling, but it's all starting this Thursday in El Paso, early December. I have insane plans for the Nemeth family.
Well, again, you'll hear some of those insane plans for the Nemeth family and that entire conversation with Ryan Nemeth and Andy Evans coming up later on this week on the Celebrate Wrestling podcast feed. But we are completely out of time. Thanks to Andy, thanks to Ryan, thanks to Dirty Duke Durrango, thanks to Joe Aguinaldo, and thank you to Gurinder Pabla as well, who is a bigger piece of the puzzle than you could ever imagine when it comes to what's coming up down the pipe for this here show. Again, thank you most of all, though, for listening, supporting the pod, supporting the radio show, supporting what we do here, and just for following, subscribing, liking stuff, and joining that Celebrate Wrestling Facebook page. If you haven't done that, this is the time. Make sure you answer the questions upon intake so I know that you're not a bot, and we'll get you in there and start having some real fun here as we welcome a whole new group of people into the Celebrate Wrestling family. That does it for me this week. I'm Mike McGuire. Until next time, thank you for listening and letting me do what I do. Play safe, drive safe. Be seen ya.
McGuire on Wrestling. Online and on the radio. Listen to the show Mondays at 4 p.m. Mountain Time at CKXU.com, wherever you get your podcasts, and at McGuireShow.com.